Thanks, Matt, and afternoon, everyone. I'd just like to acknowledge our previous speakers. I think they've been giving us some really good insights and some good information. Those of you that know me know I'm quite technologically challenged. But I did discover when doing this presentation I was able to make my guts look a bit smaller by narrowing that photo in. So if it doesn't resemble me, that's why. And this slide probably touches on what Professor Nucio talked about earlier in his presentation. I guess part of the C4 Milk project, what we're really interested in is trying to service our dairy farmers in both Queensland and the broader subtropical region. So, there's plenty of issues for our industry, but just very broadly, the issues for our industry are trying to improve the on-farm earnings before interest and tax. And some of our key challenges are fairly similar to what Professor Nucio pointed out before: increased cost of production. We're all very familiar with the increased impacts of climate variability, and also the opportunity for our farm businesses to grow. So things like competition for land and the increased price of farming properties going forward has all led to increased business risk for our farms in which they operate. Overall, the goal of our C4 Milk program has been to develop resilient farming and feeding systems that achieve an earnings before interest and tax of $660 per cow in 3 out of 5 operating years. So the C4 Milk project is jointly funded by the Queensland Government and Dairy Australia. It existed from 2010 to present, and you'll hear later on about some of our work in Phase 5, our current phase. Largely based on research and development trials conducted here at the Gatton Research Dairy, which is out to the west of us here behind us. And we're very lucky to have had help through the various phases of C4 Milk from our commercial farms. Our R&D program is probably backed by extension activities, again supported by the Government and Dairy Australia, but mainly the Queensland Government. That probably makes us a bit of an outlier. A lot of other states have gone away from extension services. We focus on days like this, discussion groups. We do a lot of one-on-one with farmers. We do extension articles and publications. We also do a few scientific publications out of our research work. And as you might have picked up, our goal is to help farmers maintain the continuity of forage supply in our highly variable climate while reducing the use of purchased feedstuffs through increasing both forage quality and quantity. So hopefully you see the tie back to our other speakers today. Very quickly, we'll just fly through some of the work that we've done so people have a bit of a background for where we're at today. This is not a be-all and end-all, this is just an overall summary. Phase 1 was 2010 to 2013, I think, 2012 roughly. Involved a feed conversion efficiency survey on farm across a range of farms, looking at what farmers were actually feeding on farm and what sort of production and responses they were getting. Management of sowing ryegrass into Kikuyu, different management strategies for grazing oats, the effect of the environment on ryegrass performance in terms of feed yield and quality in a subtropical and temperate environment, alternate forage crops and tropical pastures, things like lab, soybeans, sunflower and tropical grasses, and you'll see that has been a focus and a feature of our programs going forward, and milk response to dietary starch and sugar ratios. Phase 2 moved into, we looked at things like fodder beet and agronomic practice to see whether it was actually feasible to grow it in our subtropical environment. I can't get this pointer to work, but the gangster in the middle there you might have recognised from a younger day. I don't know that he's carrying a lot of the weight from that fodder beet. That fodder beet I think was 26 kilos. I think he's just having an air swing there making it look like he's doing something, but anyway. We've heard about sorghum. We've done a lot of work in sorghum. We identified quite early that sorghum was going to be an integral part of our dairy feeding systems to manage risk and give farmers viable options to grow forages going forward as opposed to corn. As things have developed with pressure from things like fall armyworm, sorghum has been quite a good option for farmers to look at to grow to give them an option to corn. Corn seeding rate, loosen NDF, animal feeding systems, the actual grazing of the fodder beets. We did some work around how applicable that was to be fed to our milking cows. Understand and manipulating the NDF of forages, different diversities amongst Kikuyu, and alternate protein sources. So again, continue on the work with soybeans, lupins and faba beans in soiling those crops, and a loosened pasture intake control. Phase 3, which came to an end in 2021, I think 22, had these key outcomes. The first one being the pup grazing strategy, which is the cornerstone of our pasture research and development, conducted by Dr. Marcello Benvenuti, who's with us today. Marcello's looked at this program since, I think, 2016, and has got all the way from plot work to next year we'll actually start doing a full lactation study looking at pup management and its impact on pasture performance and overall milk yield in our milking cows. Marcello's also looked at residual height to increase the leaf yield available in our pastures. We've done a lot of work on winter and summer forage management options, things like combinations, single cut and multi-cut crops. There's quite a buzz at the moment in the regen ag space around some of this combination work, so we had a look at that in some depth. Partial mixed ration management to increase pasture intake in terms of starch, protein and fibre levels within the diet. And the last one, which we've probably got ongoing today in the dairy unit here, is dairy beef feeding and marketing strategies. The C4 milk phase 3 was quite a large project. It was a 5-year project. Some of the other stuff we looked at was maximising pasture intake. We started looking at some different tropical pasture species. It was something the industry was saying they wanted to see. So things like bracarias. We looked at the difference between some grain sorghum varieties, whether it be red, whites. We had some unreleased varieties and compared them to forage types. We looked at duckweed as an alternate protein source. The implications of forage and water application rate interactions between maize, grain sorghums and forage sorghums. We heard Professor Nucio talking about cutting height. We looked at that with white sorghum cutting heights, and we looked at the role of solids in mixed rations. To bring us into line with the project that was being carried out by AgVic, we had a 12-month project, which we called Phase 4, which came to a conclusion last year. And this probably leads really well into where we've gone to with our Phase 5 project. We did a cropping desktop study. So in the grain cropping space, crop rotations are really, really well understood in terms of agronomic yield benefits and things like that. In the forage space, there's very little work conducted to see what's the effect. We're basically taking everything off. There's nothing going back to the system. So we did some desktop work and did a study around that. The second one, the cow comfort desktop study, there's a move towards internationally around greater intensification. So we did a cow comfort desktop study. We commissioned Dr. Steve Little to give us a hand with that. And it was a really nice piece of work. It demonstrated things like payback. It looked at some very basic stuff if you were a grazing farm up to doing full-blown, freestall sheds. So it was a really comprehensive and broad piece of work that was applicable to most of our farms. We did a very intense replicated pup milk response trial, which gave us some really good results and gave us a fair bit of encouragement to go ahead and do a full lactation study. And we developed an extension package that encompassed a lot of our other work called Splitting the Herd. So just to finalise, addressing the future needs. In this phase, Phase 5, we will look at pasture systems through our pup work and TMR systems and take information from both of those and make them applicable for PMR systems. It's a 3-year program. We're working in collaboration with Murray Dairy in Victoria. Murray Dairy's farming systems are moving more towards the systems that we are seeing here in the subtropical and the broader Queensland region. There's 2 components you'll hear about. We won't talk much about pasture, with the other one being forage crops that ties in with our silage day. That's the key outcome which we mentioned earlier. These are the 5 areas of work that we're actually doing 5, sorry, there's 6 areas, one being in the Murray region. The pasture space is a replicated plot experiment over 2 seasons conducted on 2 sites, so both here at Gatton and on farm. And as I mentioned earlier, we're doing the full lactation study. In the crop space, which probably has relevance to us today, we're doing a plot study over 2 consecutive seasons here at the Gatton Research Dairy. That work is being replicated in Murray Dairy. Amy will talk about the micro-silo study that she's doing with sorghums. And then we're also doing a plot study on different forage crops relevant for dairy production. Just finally, we also do a little bit of other work within the dairy team, probably more within our extension team. We've just ripped into QDAS our Queensland Dairy Accounting Scheme is starting now. We'll start pulling that data together. I guess probably what's a little bit different this year with the QDAS, Matt's been able to take the QDAS data and upload all the QDAS data into the Australian Dairy Carbon Calculator. So we're actually able to get a carbon footprint for every farm that we actually do work with. So it's actually give farmers a starting point for where they sit with their emissions intensity. And probably the other key thing we've developed in the last year by a colleague that's left us is the development of a scenario tool. So we've done some work with our farms where, for example, people might want to build a shed, they might want to take over a family partner, look at how the financing and that affects their cash flow and their business stability. And just finally, the area that Matt mentioned that I'm working with now, and which our other extension team are also working with, is our Farm Business Resilience Program. So that's new drought support for our producers. And as an offshoot, we're doing a project in North Queensland about adding some stability and some viability into the industry in the north. And that's just finally our contact details of our extension group. Thank you.